Hey everybody, I hope the connection is good. Colleen Patrick-Goudreau here, vegan author, animal advocate, all things related to living healthfully and compassionately. And I know a lot of people are at the rights conference right now. Hi everybody, if you're watching, or if anybody's watching, from the Animal Rights Conference in DC. And some of you are not there, I would imagine. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes while my husband makes us lunch to say hi, to make sure you know about the new podcast episode I just released this morning. It's based on, well, it's not based on, it is an interview with Stephen Wells, who's the executive director of the Animal Legal Defense Fund. And we have a really fantastic chat about the importance of protecting animals in the law, in the legal system, and the history of that. I talk a little bit about Henry Berg, who was the founder of the ASPCA and the first anti-cruelty laws that were passed back in the 19th century. So I think it's a fantastic, fantabulous episode, and I encourage you guys to listen to it. You can go listen to it at Food for Thought, or did I say you can listen to it at Food for Thought? You could listen to Food for Thought. Sorry, I got distracted because I saw Marianne's post. You can listen to Food for Thought at iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or anywhere you listen to podcasts. So go check it out and share it, and let me know what you think. And there's some resources on the website as well. So again, hi everybody, Colleen Patrick-Goudreau here. I'm here for you with your questions related to veganism, animal rights, animal protection, history of animal rights, film. I'm actually going to see my favorite film tonight. One of my top 3 films of all time I'm going to see tonight. There's a film society we belong to, and I cannot wait because I've never seen it on the big screen. I've only seen it on the small screen. It's called Le Cercle Rouge, and it's by Jean-Pierre Melville, who is a director, French director, and it's an incredible film. So anyway, I'm very excited about that. So yeah, any questions you have related to anything you want to ask about? And Marianne is first up with her question. What's the best way to respond to people abusing their dogs in public? Yeah, I think that's, first of all, that's really frightening to see anybody abusing their dogs in public. And of course, I think in a situation like that, when you're intervening, whether it's a person being abused or an animal person being abused, to first make sure that you're going to be safe. So perhaps confront them if you do confront them with more than one person. I think the first thing to do would be to call law enforcement and tell them about the situation so they can get there as quickly as possible. And if you're able to very safely intervene, if there is abuse that you can stop right then and there, then again, do so safely. And if there, I think in a situation like that, what we want to avoid is escalating the violence and escalating the situation and not making the person defensive and even angrier. So I think perhaps because there's obviously something wrong at that moment, you might say, excuse me, can I help you? Is there, you seem obviously upset, and I want to see if there's anything I can help you with. Number one, to diffuse the situation and ask them if there's if you can provide them any help, and that you're really uncomfortable with them hurting their dog, but so I think the whole point, if you're asking at that moment, is to stop it, obviously to stop the abuse. But if there is, a serious situation, I think law enforcement needs to be there. And, it's one of the things I talked about in this podcast episode is the history of the ASPCA and Henry Berg founding the ASPCA. What was really remarkable is that in the charter that he got from the New York State Legislature to start the ASPCA, it enabled the ASPCA officers to enforce the law and make arrests, which is pretty phenomenal for a private organization, private individuals to be able to do that. So, and of course the ASPCA continued to do that through, I think, 2013, when they disbanded their law enforcement arm. And of course now it's the police they rely on. And of course, the police should be called if there's any abusive situation, for sure. Hello, Sandy. Hello, Jill. Hello, John. Good to see you, John. I know, John, I don't know if you're a recent follower, but John recently ordered several books we just sent out to you. And was there more? I feel like there were some other things as well. I hope you're enjoying the books. I hope you got the books. Yeah, that's not okay. And I would imagine you'd have allies, Marianne, especially in a confined situation where people might be able to back you up. But I do think saying something is appropriate. I do. But again, just make sure you're safe. Thanks, John. John's asking my opinion on PETA. That's a big question. I think PETA is an organization like a lot of organizations where I think they have really good intentions, and I think they've done a lot of really good work, and I think they do. There's some campaigns I really appreciate. Of course, I totally appreciate their mission, but that doesn't mean I'm going to agree with every one of their tactics. But I'm also someone who doesn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. So while I can disagree with some of their campaigns and some of their tactics, I do appreciate their mission. So I don't know if that helps you, but I do think, their undercover investigative work is really powerful. The work they do legislatively, is very powerful. Those are the kinds of things I really stand behind. But of course, some of their more superficial campaigns, just to get attention, I don't necessarily support. And yet there's an audience even for those things. So I just try to do my work the way I think is most effective and that I know resonates with the public. And, in the end, every organization is going to do their own thing, and they have their own mission, they have their own tactics, they have their own way of doing things. And, who am I to criticize? I'm sure there's people who don't agree with the way I do things. And if there is a forum and opportunity for conversation around things that I might need to be aware of, then I would hope that I would be open, and I would hope other organizations would be as well. But and usually the way it works is that people kind of do their own thing and aren't really necessarily open to every other perspective. But I like I said, I appreciate some of the things they do, and I obviously agree with their mission. Just the way to go about fulfilling that mission is something we all have to decide what works for us and what we think is effective and what we think is appropriate. And I try to just focus on my work. So thanks for asking. And again, John, thank you for your orders recently. I remember you ordered the 30-day vegan challenge. I think the Joy of Vegan Baking and is it Color Me Vegan as well? I had those on hand, luckily, because I don't usually have my books on hand. So I sent them to you personally, and I hope you enjoy them. So again, everybody, your questions are welcome. Any comments you have, any questions you have are welcome. You can also share this video right now as you're watching it. You can share it live. You can share it on group pages. You can share it on pages. You can share it on personal accounts, and so that other people can ask their questions as well. You're welcome. So again, the new Food for Thought episode was released this morning. I had a great conversation with Stephen Wells of the Animal Legal Defense Fund, and I highly recommend you checking out their organization and checking out the podcast. Jill said Vegan Companion, the 30-day vegan, Vegan's Daily Companion, what you're talking about, Jill, is a great one for all vegans. Did John order that one? It was my first. I don't think John did because I didn't have any in stock, so I know I wouldn't have been able to fulfill it. Yeah, I really appreciate that, Jill. The Vegan's Daily Companion is definitely a book that's really close to my heart, and though it wasn't, a bestseller by any means, it's really meant a lot to everybody who has it, and that really means a lot to me. I love hearing people say that they read it on a daily basis and they only read one page at a time, and that was the idea, is to just provide some food for thought to go about our day, living compassionately, and offering some insight. The movie I was talking about, there's actually an animal element in Le Cercle Rouge. I'm not sure. Thank you. That's awesome, Jill. I'm not sure if I mentioned it in the Vegan's Daily Companion. I think I've talked about it in different. Gosh, I feel like I would have talked about it somewhere when I talk in Food for Thought podcast about film, and I talk a lot about the animal perspectives and animal issues in the arts, in film, in literature. And there are some beautiful moments in Le Cercle Rouge that are related to a character and his treatment of cats. And what I find really fascinating about how animals are portrayed in the arts, in film, in literature, for instance, I find that what's really fascinating is that they're not necessarily being written in because the filmmaker or the writer or the author is an animal advocate, but it's because they're humans who are navigating this world and our relationship with animals, and animals wind up factoring into these stories because we're human and we have this deep relationship with and history with other animals. So in Le Cercle Rouge, frankly, in one of the ways in the arts, in a film, in a story, in a narrative that a character is characterized is through their perception of a relationship with animals. And so whether if you want to portray a character as a violent, unsympathetic character, you would show them being unkind to an animal. If you want to portray a character in a much more sympathetic light, as a kind, compassionate person, you would portray them as being kind towards animals. And so in Le Cercle Rouge, one of the characters has, it's just the most beautiful, quiet scene. It has nothing to do with driving forward the story. It has everything to do with characterizing this particular character. And he comes home from this investigation that he's part of, and he hasn't been home for a couple days. And the first thing he does before he draws his own bath is pet each one of his cats. He has beautiful names for each one of them. He's this older man. He obviously lives alone. I don't know if he's widowed, but he lives alone. And he just takes a moment to say hello to each one of the cats, and then he goes and feeds them. And I'd actually forgotten about this until just now. It's my favorite film for a number of reasons. It's not the reason it's my favorite film, but it's really sweet. And then he comes back. There's a second scene that parallels it, and he does the same thing. So it's Le Cercle Rouge, L-E, you got that right, and then C-E-R-C-L-E, the circle. It means the red circle. So Le Cercle Rouge. No worries. If you could type that out, then other people could see it as well. It's like I said, a Jean-Pierre Melville film. It stars Alain Delon, who is one of my favorite actors. He's a French actor, and Melville did several films with Alain Delon. He did Le Samurai, which is incredible. I mean, it's incredible. Melville was such an amazing director. He was very influenced by American directors, but he was a French director through and through. So you've got this real core French aesthetic in the film as the film, and then you've got this kind of American aesthetic in there as well. And so Le Samurai, Le Cercle Rouge, Un Flic, I'm missing one. Those are all with Alain Delon, and then Army of Shadows is another one about the French resistance during World War II, and he's got an incredible one, an earlier one. Yeah, he was just an incredible film director. So again, Jean-Pierre Melville, one of my favorite directors of all time, and I've seen some of his films on the big screen, but we belong to the Pacific Film Archive, which is a film society connected with UC Berkeley, and they've been doing a Melville retrospective, and I found out about it late, so I would have been able to see some other favorite films, but I missed them. Again, I've seen them all, but it still would have been fun to see some of them on the big screen. But tonight we're going to get to go see Le Cercle Rouge on the big screen at the PFA. I'm very excited. Heath, hi Heath, good to see you. In Australia, we have an animal rights group called the RSPCA. They sell their name to farmers, and the farmers can place RACA approved sticker on the meat, eggs, and dairies they produce. These animal activist groups are total sellouts a lot of the time, and you got cut off. Yeah, so the RSPCA was the first animal welfare organization in the UK, and obviously carried over into Australia. And the RSPCA was founded in the 19th century, in the 1800s, 1840, I believe it was, by William Wilberforce, who was a parliamentary member, by Richard Martin, who was a parliamentary member. He was originally Irish, but then he served on the UK Parliament. And it was founded by a bunch of guys who recognized the common oppression of animals, as well as, for instance, people of color who were part of the transatlantic, well, for them, the slave trade. They had William Wilberforce was really the main force behind stopping the slave trade in the UK, and he was also one of the founders of the RSPCA. Now, that doesn't mean that today it's the same organization it was then, but I mean, in that case, a lot of it really was around laws protecting animals and passing legislation to protect animals, and then it was hard, and today it's hard. So yeah, so I imagine today there are organizations, I know there are organizations, animal welfare organizations, who believe that in fulfilling a mission of welfare towards animals, that if they could stop the most egregious forms of animal cruelty for those animals who are raised for human consumption, then they're fulfilling their mission. Obviously, those of us who believe that animals are not here for us, that even if you put a sticker on it that says, didn't suffer the most egregious forms of animal cruelty. I would argue that bringing animals into this world only to slit their throats is an egregious form of animal cruelty. And so obviously that's the difference between an animal welfare group and someone who believes in not bringing them into this world at all for that purpose. So anyway, so yeah, it's probably, you know, again, an arm of the RSPCA, but the ASPCA that was founded by Henry Bergh was modeled after the RSPCA, the original RSPCA. And honestly, the laws that were enacted at that time were pretty phenomenal. The first anti-cruelty law in the United States was in 1867, passed by Henry Bergh and the ASPCA, and I think possibly, even though the ASPCA was modeled on the RSPCA, it passed the first anti-cruelty law before the RSPCA did. Anyway, that's all that I have to say about that. Roxy, hi Roxy, welcome. Thanks everybody for joining. And again, if you have any questions, please write them below in the comments, and you can share this video right now, if you please. Roxy says, what are your thoughts on palm oil? Because it's in so many vegan butters, I want to obviously avoid it due to impact on animal habitats. So Roxy, you know, I have a podcast episode on palm oil, and I talk about it in a much bigger picture than just vegan butters. I mean, to be really honest, thanks Joe, to be really honest, you know, look, I mean, I think as people of conscience, we want to avoid products and ingredients that cause harm, like period, right? So that's our intention. And we do live in a world where it is, you know, we live in a world of consumption, and certainly there are vegan butters like Earth Balance that uses palm oil, and there's a whole contingency of people who don't believe that there's even any ethical use of palm oil because the certification process is flawed. And I would just argue that if we really want to avoid the most egregious, the biggest forms of the biggest makers of palm oil or users of palm oil, it's really the major multi-international conglomerates who are using palm oil in all the crappy foods. The palm oil that Earth Balance gets, it is certified, and I do believe them, because there are plantations that were cut down years and years and years ago that are now being used to grow palm. They're not in Indonesia. They're not killing orangutans to get the palm oil. And, you know, again, it is so important to ask questions and be mindful and understand what it is we're supporting. But I don't believe it's as black and white as it's sometimes portrayed. So I know more about how Earth Balance gets its palm oil than I do about, you know, most other companies. And the most other companies are the ones that use like 90% of the palm oil, and they are cutting down plantations. So do our best, you know, find out the information about the companies we're supporting. I've done a lot of research into the palm oil that is considered ethically sourced, and some people just say, no, there's no such thing. Okay, well then don't ever use it. My argument is that when we go after or criticize vegan companies, all I'm saying is they're the low-hanging fruit when they are trying to make the best decisions. I mean, in this particular case, I'm not saying all vegan companies all make the best decisions, but if we really want to attack like the biggest users of palm oil, it's not Earth Balance, because like I said, they're not cutting down rainforests. They're getting their palm oil from plantations that were cut down many years ago, and again, not in Indonesia, not where there are orangutans. You know, and then I kind of end just talking about the fact that, you know, agriculture imposes itself upon wild spaces. It just does. And if we want to avoid any exploitation of wild spaces ever, then we really need to reconsider if we want to support agriculture at all. And so, you know, again, in trying to do the best we can in an imperfect world, I do support, you know, knowing who our farmers are, supporting local farmers, going out to those farms and seeing how they deal with pests. Because if you're farming fruit and vegetables, you have got to fight nature. You've got to fight all the little critters who want to eat your food. You've got to fight all the larger animals who want to eat your crops. And so in the end, you know, it's really agriculture versus wild spaces, and we need to, again, always make sure we're making the most ethical choices, but but it's not as black and white. That's my opinion. Yeah. So check out the podcast, Roxy. You know, I kind of talk about that in detail, what I just said as an overview. And, you know, there's going to be people who disagree with me. And yes, of course, Miyoko's cheese doesn't use palm oil. That's great. It uses coconut oil. The reason palm oil became a very popular oil to use is because it's very shelf stable and it lasts for a long time, on the shelf. And so obviously that's why it's used and it's cheap. And that's why it's used in a lot of products that, are shelf stable. And so I would argue that those are the most crappy products because they're like meant to like sit on the shelf for years. And that's not really something I want to put in my body. So the majority of palm oil is used for crackers and cookies and things that, you know, all the junky snacks that you'll find on the shelves. And it's also used for certain butters. And there are those that don't use palm oil, and you can find it in Miyoko's butter. I think her butter's good. I had it once and I didn't love it. And then I had it a second time and I did think it was really good. It's very coconutty. And I don't always want the coconut flavor, but I do think it's fantastic, and I do think everything Miyoko does is amazing. So yeah, there's an option to get a butter if it's available near you to get Miyoko's butter. So I hope that helps. Leah, you're welcome. I'm not pretending that it's not easy. It is difficult to make ethical choices all the time, but I just think we have to be realistic in terms of understanding what the real bigger issues are. And, you know, the orangutans who are being killed and the forests that are being cut down, the rainforests that are being cut down, it's not because of earth balance. And that's all I'm saying, is that there are conglomerates that dominate this market. And, you know, I personally, aside from earth balance, because I do believe that it's ethically sourced, aside from earth balance, I actually have in my own shopping, I don't buy products that have palm oil. My husband knows that when he goes out and buys things. I mean, we tend to buy a lot of the same things again and again, so we know which products have palm oil. If I don't know where it comes from, I don't buy it. And that's the truth. And it's become the same thing with chocolate. If I don't know how that chocolate was sourced, and so there's a couple companies that I do trust, and I do use Food Empowerment Project's chocolate app where you can find out how the chocolate was sourced, and or at least you can find out which companies have given them information about how it was sourced, and those that don't, and then you can make your own informed choices. So palm oil and chocolate are definitely one of those things that I just extend to my, you know, desire to make ethical choices. And yeah, and actually I want to say too, Jill, you're reminding me, when I talk about earth balance, it's the organic earth balance. I don't buy the regular earth balance. I only buy the organic earth balance. And that's because there are even higher standards for the organically sourced palm oil. And I prefer to support those standards. So the regular earth balance has its own standards, and then the organic has other standards. So I only buy the organic earth balance, and I do say that in the podcast. Jill says, true earth balance is very tasty. I don't buy butter, but when I've had it, it seemed to be the best flavor. Just like Just Mayo is definitely the best mayo. I agree. I do think earth balance is still the best. And I love being able to share it with non-vegans who think you don't eat, you know, that vegans don't eat butter and that you have to sacrifice somehow. So I'm grateful for it, and I think it is really good. Again, the organic. I might have to argue with you about Just Mayo being the best mayo, because I'm still a huge fan of my crack, which is the Wildwood garlic aioli. I still think Wildwood garlic aioli is the best. And yeah, for me, it's the best. I do think Just Mayo is very good, and I think it tastes very much like the mayonnaise I grew up on. But garlic aioli by Wildwood, damn it, it's so good. It's just really good. Yeah. Yeah, Roxy, and I would say I haven't baked with Miyoko's butter, and perhaps other people have and they can speak to it. I can't speak to how it is baking wise, but Earth Balance is just like dairy-based butter. And so, you know, The Joy of Vegan Baking being my first baking book, and 10 years later still being a bestseller, I stand by Earth Balance in baked goods. And, you know, the hope is that there's going to continue to be more butters out there. Just the way vegan mayos have flooded the market. Like, we have like 10 vegan mayonnaises now. I'd love to see vegan butter do the same thing. So we'll see. Jill says Wildwood garlic aioli. I've never heard of it. Yeah. Yes, you do have to check it out. It's so dangerously good. Stony, I even use Earth Balance to make my German pretzels. Ooh, I use Earth Balance to make pretzels. Yeah, and brush it on the top. I want some of those German pretzels. Where are my German pretzels there, Stony? Leah says, your rational approach is why I've recommended your books and videos to all those who ask about vegan info just earlier today as well. Thanks for all you do. Well, thanks, Leah. I really appreciate that. Try to be as honest and practical as possible. And, you know, I'm on this journey too. We're all on a journey. We're all trying to do the best we can. And I think that sometimes we can lose perspective because we want to do the best thing and then we forget about kind of what the whole intention is in the first place. And, you know, again, it is impossible to live perfectly, but I do think there's a lot we can do. And so we always have to be mindful and ask questions. Don't tease me, Stony. Don't tease me. You don't even have my address. How you can do that? What constitutes German pretzels as distinguished? I mean, when I think of pretzels, I think of German, like, because I assume they derived from Germany. That's my understanding, at least. So when you say German pretzels, is that just redundant for pretzels? Like, are those just pretzels you're talking about? Are you talking about like the puffy pretzels versus like the crispy pretzels we would get from a snack bag? Is that what you're talking about? Cause when I think of like I would call them soft pretzels, I guess. So is that what you're talking about? Like the soft pretzels, like the doughy pretzels? Cause I think of them as German pretzels. Roxy says, yes, I agree with Leah. Oh, thank you. I'm so happy I found you at the beginning of my journey. Otherwise, I honestly don't think I would have lasted. That means a lot to me. Thank you, Roxy. I do dismay sometimes when I see people getting information that makes living vegan so much more difficult than it has to be, and so much more what's the word I'm looking for? Just evangelical than it has to be. I mean, I've said it a million times. I will say it. Thanks, Jessica. I will say it a million times more. It's not about being perfect. That's not the goal. That being vegan isn't the goal. Like, I didn't become vegan because I wanted to be vegan. Like it's not like I don't know. You know, like I wanted to get a master's in English literature because I wanted that master's because I wanted to reach that goal, and that was the end, and I learned a lot, and then I have this thing, and then there it is. Being vegan isn't about like reaching that goal of being vegan. It's about doing the best we can to not hurt anybody. It's about living compassionately. It's about manifesting our values. I mean, maybe your values are unconditional health, optimal wellness, unconditional compassion. That's the goal. Like, those are the goals. Like, I want to live as compassionately as possible. Like, I want to do everything I can to not participate in violence against animals or anybody else. Like, that's my goal. Like, that's it, right? Oh, how can I do that? Oh, by not participating in the structure and the system in the industries that actually do hurt and kill and exploit animals. Oh, okay. And what's that called? That's called being vegan. So it's this, so that's what I think is such a mistake, is that people talk about being vegan like it's some end. And that's when people get hung up on the perfection. And that's when people get hung up on the purity, because they think it is it's like a checkbox. Like, oh, is that, that's vegan. Okay, that's not vegan, that's vegan. It's like, no, like, you're completely, you're not a pure vegan, or you're not a real vegan. And it just completely turns me off, and it turns other people off. And I think it's why we have recidivism in terms of, going back and continuing to contribute to violence against animals and not living according to your values. Excuse me, being very rude. He's very rude, very loud. These Stellar's Jays are the loudest. Jays, can you see him? I don't know if you can see him. Stony is clarifying for me, saying pretzels made with butter in the dough, and yes, they have to be soft. Okay, so that constitutes a German pretzel. Are you saying that is differentiated from another kind of soft pretzel, or are you saying that traditionally all soft pretzels are German and therefore made with butter on the inside? Because when I think of the pretzels that I have in the Joy of Vegan Baking, for instance, it's yeast, obviously, and flour, yeasted flour, and water, I don't think I add butter in the pretzel dough, but I could be wrong. I have to go back and see. Maybe a little of oil, but I can't remember. Tasha says, I feel the same. You definitely made my transition easier almost 4 years ago. This is becoming a love fest, everybody, which is lovely. I don't mind. Tom Hunt says, I just got the 30-Day Vegan Challenge book as a birthday gift. Woohoo! I'm so excited to try these recipes. It's awesome, Tom. There's some pretty awesome recipes, if I do say so myself, and I just did. I just said so myself. In the 30-Day Vegan Challenge, and the new edition is coming out, everybody, in September. So tell everybody, you know, I mean, I'm selling the last of the copies that I have from the last edition. It's such good news to have sold the 30-Day Vegan Challenge to a publisher, because otherwise either the 30-Day Vegan Challenge would have gone out of print, because I just didn't have the desire, I didn't have the money, I didn't want to invest another $20,000 into printing, you know, 4,000 more books or whatever it would be that I'd have to pay. And I just didn't want to continue being the distributor of the books. I wanted it to get into bookstores. I wanted it to have wider distribution. And I didn't want to pay for the printing of these books. I am a writer. I am not a publisher. And so I'm getting out of the publishing business. And so a wonderful publisher just here in California, Northern California, in Petaluma, bought the rights to the 30-Day Vegan Challenge. So it's, you know, less money for me per book, but I really don't care. It's not why I wrote this book. And it just means that the book is going to have wider distribution, because it can get into bookstores. They'll worry about all the fulfillment with Amazon. I am actually cutting off my, or just closing my account with a fulfillment house. I do have some copies still here at my house that I'm sending off to people who order them directly through my website. But after that, it's actually the new edition is on Amazon right now. So if you're interested in the 30-Day Vegan Challenge, you don't want to wait until September, you can order it through me now. But after that, there is a new edition on Amazon. You can pre-order it right now, and we'll be having a big push for it. And I'm doing some book events for the relaunch of the book through this publisher. So I'm really happy about it, and I'm really glad it's in your hands, Tom. That's where I want the book to be. Thanks, Marie Eve. She just checked the Joy of Vegan Baking, and I use canola oil. Okay, so oil is what I use for the dough. And I think what Stony is saying is that, if I'm understanding correctly, I mean, you know, there's lots of recipes out there. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the original, you know, German recipes for soft pretzels would have used dairy-based butter. So yeah, that's actually good to know. I use oil, which makes the pretzels are fantastic. If you guys haven't tried the soft pretzels in the Joy of Vegan Baking, really? Oh my, do you hear these Stellar's trays? They are the noisiest. What is your problem? Where are you? Where are you? Loud. There you are. Loud. We've had a bird fest here today. We've seen a million birds. I found a hummingbird, a dead hummingbird in the fountain the other day. It's very sad. He didn't look like he drowned. He was actually right on the edge. I think he may have fought. These hummingbirds fight with each other like it's the World Wrestling Federation. They are so territorial, and they just are so sassy with one another. So I see them. I mean, there's plenty of room, there's plenty of place, there's plenty of, you know, flowers and water, but they fight with each other. So I wonder if he didn't get in a fight with another hummingbird and he died. It was very sad. It was very sad because I was looking at the fountain from up above, and I was just looking at all the birds, and they were flying around the fountain, and they were drinking the water. And then I looked closer, and I saw there was a little figure in the top part of the fountain, and I went down, and it was a dead little hummingbird. It was very sad. And now there's a little chickadee right here. And these Stellar's jays are the loudest things. It's adorable. Marie Eve says, I'm sure your recipe is amazing, but Stoney's pretzels buns are my favorite. Lots of vegan love in our house. Okay, wait, so you're connected. It sounds like the two of you are connected, because that would be a real coincidence if you just knew Stoney's pretzels. The Earth Balance says Stony gives that little something that makes the pretzels heavenly and comforting. I believe it. You know, butter is just obviously a lot richer, and the salt obviously I think contributes as well. So I will, now I didn't do it for this new edition because, you know, there's a new edition of the Joy of Vegan Baking, and I had the opportunity to update recipes, and I talked about aquafaba in the new edition of the book, but I didn't go through recipe by recipe to make updates unless I knew I wanted to. Oh, okay, you're engaged. Oh, that's lovely. Yay! It's adorable. You sounded like you were just like, oh yeah, Stoney's pretzels are world renowned, and I just happen to know Stoney's pretzels. That's hilarious. But no, you're actually engaged to Stoney, so that makes sense. So then yeah, I'm expecting some of these pretzels in my mouth right now. You're making me want to make these pretzels right now. And I could if I wanted to. think I have everything required. That's what's so wonderful about breads and pretzels. You could just make them like that. Anyway, but what I was saying was, yeah, so those of you who are watching right now, you can substitute the oil. You can substitute Earth Balance for the oil in the Joy of Vegan Baking pretzels. Where do you guys live? Where are you, Marie Eve and Stony? Did you say Australia? No, you didn't say Australia. That was somebody else. There's a hawk flying above. Okay, this is why I don't leave my house. It's really difficult to leave this space because there were my dear families out on the side of the yard earlier. The squirrels were all running around. The hawks are flying above. The Stellar's jays are making a racket. The chickadees are being adorable. The hummingbirds are fighting with each other. And all is right with the world, is all I can say. Oh, you're in Montreal. Right on. Oh, I have to get to Montreal. It is on our list. It is on our list. I was maybe going to go to the Toronto Food Festival this year, but it's just not going to work. It's only a month away, and the plans have not been confirmed, so I think that's not going to happen. But Montreal is on our list. We might actually make a trip up there around Christmas time, because we're going to be back east for Christmas, and we might make a trip of being back east at Christmas time, just to make it, because I'm going back to New Jersey so much these days that we just want to make it like more of a trip. Come to Montreal and I'll give you some pretzels with some homemade vegan. Oh, that's awesome. The Camembert, the cheese. I actually, that's a cheese that's very new to me. I was not a big cheese person when I was not vegan, and I didn't grow up in a French enclave anywhere, so so that was not a cheese that was familiar to me. But I have tried vegan version of that since, and but I will take you up on your offer. Do not doubt me. Kevin, hello Kevin, good to see you. We hope you hit Vancouver. I know, I have to do Vancouver too. Well, if you know of any group up in Vancouver, I feel like I would have heard from a Vancouver group a while ago. I would love to get up to Vancouver. I've been to Vancouver just from a personally, just many years ago, probably 15 years ago or something, but I wanted to get back up there and do a talk or something. Yeah, and Victoria. Okay, can you make that happen? Make that happen, Roxy and Kevin. Why do I have to do everything? My God. Roxy says, have you ever had BioLife products? Yes, I have. They haven't made it to Canada yet, but I get my UK friends to mail it to me. It's in the US now though. So yeah, I actually have a video. BioLife, which is originally a Greek company, they sent me a bunch of their products couple years ago, and I did a little video on YouTube. You could probably find it if you search for my name and VioLife or VioLife, whatever you want to call it, on YouTube. And I did a little grilled cheese demonstration with my neighbor's sons, so it's very cute. And then it started making its way more around the US, which is phenomenal. And if you listen to my Scotland podcast, I talk all about the deli slices, the vegan deli slices and cheeses we had throughout our entire trip in Scotland, because we were making sandwiches every day for our 100-mile trek. The cheeses were BioLife cheese, so we had them like every day. And then I do think there is a couple US companies that private label BioLife, but maybe I shouldn't say that. Yes, so I do know them. You've probably had them, because I do think there's a US company. Well, actually, I do think there's a company that private labels, but I don't know if I'm supposed to say it. Let's just say I think. I'm not sure. I don't want to say. I can't say anymore. I can't say anymore. I want to say Kazia. Am I saying that correctly? Or Kazia? Kazia? Kazia. I want to say Kazia. Could you please tell me how to pronounce your name, because I don't want to say it incorrectly. Says, hello Colleen, I'm a podcast listener from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I love that this is just like the Canadian listenership. Do you or anyone have recommendations for vegan butter substitutes for baking? Earth Balance, for example, has pea protein in it and I'm allergic. Oh no, oh my God. We just had this whole conversation about Earth Balance and how, people were asking about the palm oil in Earth Balance, and I was giving the green light for supporting Earth Balance and their organic line. But do I know of any a vegan butter that's in Canada that doesn't have pea protein? That is too specific a question. No, I don't, because I wouldn't have even guessed that Earth Balance had pea protein, because I know they have a combination of different oils. So I wouldn't have guessed that it was pea protein. Is it, Earth Balance has a lot of different lines. They have like a, they have a canola, they have an olive oil, they have, I think they have God, I'm missing something. They have a couple different ones. Is there one possibly that doesn't have pea protein, or have you contacted them to ask if any of them don't have pea protein? I don't even know if Miyoko's does, but I don't know if it's got Canadian distribution at this point. Does anybody else know, since this is the Canadian Facebook Live? I'd love to know if anybody else has any answers for Kasia. Tell me. Pronounce Kasha. Yes, thank you. That makes more sense. I think Kasia wasn't that far off. Kasha, thanks. Anybody have an answer for Kasha? Please. Roxy said, I just got back from Greece and ate so much there. We bought some at a restaurant and put the mozzarella, and a restaurant put the mozzarella on a pizza for us. Isn't that awesome? Yeah, I talked about that also in Scotland. There were a couple pubs where we actually had them make the vegan sausages we bought in the village grocery stores. We went to a couple pubs, and for dinner and for breakfast asked them to fry up the sausage for us, so we had some vegan sausage. Restaurants are willing to do that for you if you just ask nicely, and I love that you got that done. That's awesome. Marie E says, I feel compelled to specify that Stoney's camembert, I am not even pronouncing it correctly, is also homemade. I actually figured that, just like his smoked Gouda. Seriously, you have smoked Gouda. I love Gouda. His Swiss style and all other yummy vegan stuff. What is this? Who is this Stoney person? Stoney, what is going on? Are you doing this professionally, or is this just your hobby and you just share it with all of everyone you love and who loves you back? Love you. I don't see any pea protein ingredient in the organic Earth Balance, says Marie Eve. Basel, is that what it's called? Am I pronouncing it correctly? You're all going to see how poor my French is. Sounds like that one is an option. Augustin, am I pronouncing that correctly? I used coconut oil to cook some of my foods. I know the American Heart Association took out a study showing how it's not healthy for us. But of course, using small amounts of coconut oil or canola oil or olive oil, I think the whole oil thing is just so out of hand. And, the amount of oil that I use in my cooking is so low that I'm not worried about what kind of oil it is that I'm using. So, American Heart Association study schmutty, just whatever. Next year there's going to be another study that says it's amazing. And the next year after that there's going to be another study about how it's terrible. I mean, it's coconut, it's a coconut, and I'm not worried about it. So you just keep doing that. Basil is super inexpensive, but that's where my palm oil concern comes into play, right, Roxy? So that's probably what I would say is that's probably a company, if it's like a kind of more of a margarine and it's a bigger company. I mean, you can find out where they source their palm oil, but that would be a concern about where their palm oil is sourced. That's an example of that. Good. I'm glad I pronounced it correctly. This Cheese is Nuts is a new vegan cheese cookbook by Rich Roll's wife, Julie Piat. That's awesome. So people can do that and make their own cheese. Of course, Miyoko has her book, Artisan Cheese? What is it called? Artisan Cheese, right? Her book, you can make it at home as well. And Kevin said I would contact the Vegan Supply Store about butter. They're a Canadian online store and just opened a location in Vancouver. I love it. Thanks, guys. I love this Canadian representation here. Axel says, what is your thought on civil disobedience when it comes to animal rights? There are vegan activists who illegally release animals from factory farms. Do you support such actions? Hold on. Do you support such actions? Hard question from a fan of yours. Sorry for repeating this in the comments. Okay. And then, I'm just following it. Okay, awesome. So Angela is excited about Kevin's contribution, and Stoney is saying we're actually working on a cheese recipes to start producing to sell. I love it. Lauren says, I'm going to come back to you. I'm not ignoring you, Axel. We also have to look at who funds these studies. Exactly. I was going to say that as well, Lauren, for sure. Oftentimes there's an ulterior motive to finding results, for sure. And Kasha says, I will have to contact the other Earth Balance versions. That was the Earth Balance original I was referencing. We do have Miyoko's here, and I'll have to try it. Good. So try Miyoko's. I don't believe they use pea protein, but I'm not sure of that low level of ingredients. I'm not that familiar. And yeah, find out about Earth Balance Organic and the other versions of Earth Balance, because there are different oils they use, and so perhaps there's different proteins they use as well. Awesome side note, says Roxy, Canadian Food Guide is taking dairy off the food guide. I know that. It is amazing. However, this hasn't been finalized yet, so I don't think. Okay, so that's awesome. Frankly, if you guys are able to write to whoever would be, you know, the equivalent of our USDA, the nutrition guidelines, the government, to support it, you know, the more they hear from folks. I don't know if we often get comment periods when there's something like that, a change in the nutrition standards and guidelines. There's a public comment period, so if there's an opportunity for you to contribute and comment, I would recommend it. So what are my thoughts about civil disobedience when it comes to animal rights? Well, civil disobedience is one thing. Taking animals illegally from factory farms is another, right? Usually, if I'm answering your question correctly, and if I'm understanding the question correctly, is that tends to be in the context of I think my husband's bringing lunch out, so I'll answer this very quickly. I think it's usually in the context of, you know, an opportunity to be able to shed light on the conditions these animals are kept in, and then they videotape them, and then obviously if they're able to get this footage to a news station, then it serves a much larger purpose. So, so do I support that? Yes, I do. I don't have a problem with that. You know, that's different than just saying, like, you know, you release minks from a mink farm. It's really complicated, because then there really is an issue of how those individual animals affect the population of animals who are in the vicinity where those animals are released. It's not, again, black and white, but if you're asking me, do I have a problem with the illegal taking of animals from factory farms for the purpose of education and campaigning, and obviously to save that individual animal, just because it's a law, I don't think it's necessarily the right law, but you didn't hear me say that. So yeah, so I think there are different tactics to, you know, to fulfill our mission, and it's, you know, it's complicated. Excuse me, is that a lunch tray I see? Yeah. Why is it over there and not over here? You're on shooting time. I'm wrapping up. You won't be seen. This is a good time to wrap up, because my husband's got some lunch. Maybe I'll show you what he made. He's really into potatoes lately, so he's been making like roasted potatoes, kind of perfected them, potato salad. Is there a comment period, Marie-Eve, for the new guide? Very important to go share our thoughts. I think it's very important, and I think I would encourage all of you to go share your thoughts and use that as an opportunity to comment. You're welcome, Augustine. You're welcome, Axel. Can I see the potato salad so I can show everybody, and then I'm going to say goodbye? Okay, everybody, you can. Oh, you don't want to. You don't want to show? Why don't you want to show? Oh, he's putting some pepper on. Dress it up a little bit. It's beautiful. Thank you, Bello. This is David's potato salad. And I'm going to guess it's made with garlic aioli. Yep. Should I try it? Is this mine or is this yours? Can I have this? Okay. So, potato salad. You're welcome, Christine. Thanks to my husband for all he does. This is delicious. Oh my God. Potato salad. Potatoes, red potatoes, and carrots, and celery. Oh, and it's multicolored carrots. I love it. Okay. This is my cue. I'm heading out. I'm excited. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Canadians and Australians and Americans and North American, wherever you're from. Thank you. Good to see you. Thanks for your questions. Share this video for the animals. This is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Thanks for watching.